Simon stroked his hand down the length of my hair and onto my lower back, directing me towards the most remote table on the leafy terrace. We brushed past midsummer honeysuckles and I sighed in pleasure. Honeysuckle was quite possibly my favourite aroma. I was here with my favourite person, and this was potentially my new favourite eating place. Anywhere specialising in sweet deliciousness and naming itself the dessert garden had to be up there in my top 3, at least. Simon leaned back to me as we walked. "Nice beer garden," he whispered. "It is. I love the fairy lights. And there's an amazing smell too," I whispered back. "Honeysuckle?" "Well, yeah, but not just that. Cakes baking." Simon ruffled his goatee and nodded. "Can't wait," he said. I couldn't either. We'd already eaten cheese sandwiches in the car and washed them down with a flask of smoky sweet coffee. It's what you do when you're a desertarian and have been saving your sweet teeth all day for this place's untypical desserts that were apparently whimsical and created with a touch of genius. That was Angelina's opinion, and when she told me about this place and their speciality pudding menu, I put down my phone, grabbed Simon and shouted into his face, "We have to go tomorrow. Tomorrow!" Fortunately, Simon and I share this passion, and convincing him to drive to the dessert garden this evening involved no effort. He seemed even more excited than I was. Already in love with the atmosphere, we picked up the menu as soon as we found our table and prepared to be wowed. The organic ginger sponge with rum and butter candy custard looked divine, and the strawberry-stuffed profiteroles with white chocolate and pink gin sauce were so prettily decorated with crystallised violets and rose petals. And for vintage kitsch, you couldn't do better than the enormous Knickerbocker Glory. But Simon's gaze rested on another diner's table and referenced it with the menu. Figs in apple syrup with Prosecco sorbet. And the plate was stunning. Artistry and food combined as the sorbet was trimmed with elderflower fritters and toffee apple syrup nests. "Who thinks of these things?" whispered Simon. "Who and why?" I said. "And who will pay for them?" I said, smiling my knowing smile at my husband. It was a knowing smile because we both knew the answers to these ritual questions. We could pay, and we would pay for sweets and puddings, cakes and desserts of all descriptions. Simon, deep in the grips of the menu's dessert descriptions, didn't notice our friendly waitress wearing standard black skirt and white blouse uniform over her amply padded frame. Imagining the size I'd be if I worked here myself, I turned to the waitress and grinned excitedly. I'd like the melon ice with dark chocolate glaciers, ginger snap and chocolate-coated crystallised ginger. She must have been accustomed to such enthusiasm as she nodded and wrote melon ice on her pad. "And how about you, sir?" she asked Simon. But as he turned to answer, both gasped in surprise. "Simon?" the woman yelled. "Sandra?" he yelled back. "What the heck are you doing here?" I sat and shook my head a little as my left leg twitched in mild confusion. Who was Sandra, and why had her presence given my husband of 10 years such a pleasant shock? He turned to me, and his expression surpassed even his interest in the menu. "It's Sandra," he raved. "My Sandra!" And then it clicked. Sandra, his big sister. She'd been fostered out of the family owing to her semi-criminal tendencies as a teen. Then she'd left the foster home under a cloud and nobody in the family had seen her since. "Wow," I said. "How did you know it was her after all this time? It must have been 15 years. "I don't know, I just knew." "It's the eyes," said Sandra. "I've always remembered your eyes. How could I forget the face of my favourite little brother? Last time I saw you, you were living in Wilkins Walk. And I should have been living with my fosterers, Mr. and Mrs. Krabby Crabtree." "Sharon," Simon said. "This is Manda, my wife. She's a fellow pudding fancier. We met and bonded over brandy snaps and cream." I like to tell everyone that. "Hence our expansive waistlines," I said. "Hi, Sandra. It's so amazing to meet you. I have heard so much about how you rebelled and ran away. Sounds like you've always been Simon's hero." Simon's nod brought Sandra back to reality. "I better get on with your order. What are you having, Simple Simon?" He gave her his cheekiest smile. apple, golden sultanas, syrup and cinnamon pie, he said. Bet you still like your pies with loads of custard, finished Sandra. You got it, said Simon. Sandy, write down your phone number. We can't keep you from your work, but I'll give you a ring tomorrow. Grinning, Sandra ripped a sheet from her order pad and wrote her number along with the words, Sandy the Rebel. That's what we all called you, Simon said. And I wasn't the only one to love my puddings I'd just seen on the menu. Creations by Sandra Deegan. That's you, isn't it? This is your place. Yep, I'm Sandra Deegan, married to Chris Deegan. He is the landlord of the Prince's Arms. I rent his terrace and kitchen for my new business, the Dessert Garden. It's been my dream since I ran away from the Krabby Crabtrees to study catering in Rome and Paris. And now I specialise in patisserie and confectionery. It's a dream come true, this place. For us too, said Simon. And the best dream ever is meeting you again.